All right, everyone, this is NorvellCentral coming back at you with another YouTube video. And I do have a different background in the back, so just bear with me on that one. But this is NFL Draft Day, finally. And, we want to always talk about Jermaine Johnson because he's probably going to be a top 15 pick, maybe. Even some people have even said top 3, top 5. So it's going to be really exciting to see that. You got Jashaun Corbin, and you also got Keirthomas. Now, the thing that I want to address that a lot of Florida State fans are kind of worried about this season is how are you going to go life without Jermaine Johnson and Keirthomas? Because Jermaine Johnson last season, he had 12 sacks. We all know the deal with that. He come over from Georgia and was a really effective piece for Florida State. You turn over and have a guy like Keirthomas from South Carolina comes over to Florida State and has 6 sacks in a Fox role position. And that's 18 sacks that you're really missing from last season. Now, how do you do this per se? Will it be more of a one player that you bring in that can be really effective, or will it be just more of a collective effort? And I definitely think it's going to be a collective effort because you look at the 10 scholarship defensive ends that you have on the roster so far. You look at a Leonard Warner that I think is going to have a limited role, but I think he's going to have a specific role for himself, specifically at the Fox position. He was a linebacker at one point, converted over to defensive end, and now I believe he's at his 7th year or 6th year. He's been here for a very long time. So we'll definitely see how that role carves out, but I could definitely see him maybe getting a sack or two in a reserved kind of role. You look at a guy like Dennis Briggs. That's a guy that's going to be switching inside to outside. He's going to be all over the place, but Mike Norvell specifically said that he's going to be playing more along the lines of the Fox position. Now, the problem with Dennis Briggs is he did have that injury against Louisville with the chop block. So that is something you're going to have to worry about. They have limited his snaps a little bit, kind of getting back from the rehab process. Everything's going great with his rehab process, but they are kind of going slower with that to try to counteract some of the basically some of the injury that he's been having with that. So you want to take that slow in that situation, but I think Briggs can get about 3 or 4 sacks at least. I think he's going to be efficient and a pivotal part into this defense as it goes. Then you got a guy like Derek McClendon, who I'm very excited about. I think he's really emerged this spring as a guy that's going to step up, and he even talked about he's going to take Jared Verse's spot. He is him, as he says, and he has got a guy with a ton of confidence. He lives for this moment. And I believe he is now a recent ambassador for Rising Spear. So it's someone to take notice of because he really has outperformed this spring. And you're hoping that translates to the fall. And then later on, when we get to Duquesne, you really want to see that action go for him because in a reserved role, he did have 3.5 sacks. So that is kind of efficient there for him. And I think that could be a moment for him to maybe have 5 or 6 sacks. But we'll definitely see. I want to see the production more, and I want to see more of the proof in the pudding kind of thing. TJ Davis, I'm not really sure what they're going to do with him just yet. I don't really know if he's really in the plans, but we'll definitely see how that kind of goes there. But the big talking point of this offseason is Jared Verse. He's an Albany transfer that had 9.5 sacks last season, and he's somebody that FSU fans are really looking forward to actually contributing at a high level this season. Now, will he get 9.5 sacks this season? Not really sure because he does have 3 years to develop himself. He has to develop some kind of tools and has to get right with himself. Now, a lot of people are looking at the Marcus Cushney situation from Alabama A&M. He transferred out of the program this past season, and, he really didn't play much at Florida State. Now, a lot of people are kind of comparing that situation to him because it's an FCS player, but you also have to realize that Marcus Cushney was undersized. He didn't really have the effective weight or the effective tallness, anything like that. And his height really dictated how he was in terms of foot speed, everything like that. But Jared Verse, on the other hand, is about 6'4", 255. He's built like crazy, and I know that doesn't really mean a whole lot. You have to you have to be able to get proof on the field that you're able to be consistent. But that game against Syracuse, where he was running all over the field and using his top-notch speed, is very impressive to see. Now, another guy that really decreased his body weight earlier in the year, and then now you're seeing a big decrease or a big increase in body weight because he's up to, I think, 250 now, and that's Patrick Payton. And that's a kid that I was really excited about. He started out as an outside linebacker at Miami Central. He played a little bit last season, but it wasn't a ton. You wanted to see more production out of him coming into this season, and he has really improved and really stepped up his game. I think he could really be a pivotal reserve piece, and I think he could be a guy that even has 2 or 3 sacks. I think you really can probably take a flyer on him and maybe kind of bank him to have that kind of outbreak as a reserve, maybe to fill that Quayshawn Fuller role where he transferred out of the program and he's going on elsewhere. So we'll definitely see how that plays out. Then you got a guy like George Wilson. He was at 189 at his weight, and now I believe he's at like 210. He's still gaining that body weight, so I'm not sure how he's going to factor into this season, but we'll definitely see with that. You got a guy like Byron Turner, who actually suffered a season-ending injury last season. He didn't really gain a lot of weight. He actually was really, really built. So I'm hoping to see him more of in a reserve capacity this season and see where he ends up next season. And then you got a guy like Chambray Jackson. He's more of a guy that was kind of like Joshua Farmer, where he switched from outside to inside. They're trying to play him at both sides, and maybe he can turn into a guy like Dennis Briggs, where Dennis Briggs will slide it from the Fox position back to the defensive tackle position at times. Chambray Jackson is a guy that they have in their plans, but I really don't know if he has a big, big role this season because, he is redshirted from last season, and you want to see more opportunities for that. Then you got a guy like Aaron Hester, who I was very high on. I think he's a very underrated prospect in this past recruiting cycle. I don't know how much playing time he'll get, but I do think that he is an effective piece for Florida State in the future. But, it can't be an efficient pass rush without the defensive tackles. And the defensive tackles are basically a strength for Florida State this season. You got a guy like Robert Cooper, which you're going to get out of him. He's a 4th or 5th year senior. I think he's a 5th year senior now. And he has been a very, very efficient player for Florida State. Trench monster is what they call him, and he definitely lives up to the billing, of course. Jarrett Jackson is another guy who I think at Louisville, he really didn't get a whole lot of opportunities. A lot of people were thinking he was slow and unmotivated and this and that. But Norvell has actually talked about in previous media sessions that he is an X factor. He is that guy that you can really bank on to being that special piece. If everything clicks for him, he could be really, really special. Now, he has shown flashes this season to be successful, but we'll definitely see how that falls out into the fall. Then you got a guy like Fabian Lovett, who actually returned with Robert Cooper being back this season, and both of those guys, I think, could be drafted. Fabian Lovett had his moments last season, especially during that North Carolina game. He absolutely dominated, and you want to see more out of him this season and being able to take that next step for Florida State's defense to be successful, specifically their pass rush, so that way they can get those points of attacks and they can really be successful. Then you got a guy like Malcolm Ray, who I think this is a guy that is kind of the wild card in all this situation. I think he's a very, very underrated piece. Mike Norvell loves him. I think the whole team is really kind of caught on to his work ethic and how he plays. And I think Malcolm Ray is really going to be that shining star that you could really see as that reserve to really be able to step up either at the nose tackle position or the defensive tackle position. Then Joshua Farmer, like I talked about before with Chambray Jackson. This is a guy that's went up from about 260 to about 310 now. He's really filled out his body weight. He's really getting everything back up to speed with his weight, and I really think that he could be an efficient piece as well. Then you got Daniel Lyons. This is a guy that Odell Haggins has praised about all offseason. And this is a guy that's about 280 right now. He's still learning the position, still getting everything situated for him. He's about 285 right now. They want to see him at about that 295 to 300 mark, and I think that could be a really efficient weight for him. But I do think that Daniel Lyons will be an effective piece. Probably not this season, but he will be the following season, I believe, after Cooper and also Lovett probably depart for the NFL draft. And lastly, you have Bishop Thomas. I think this is a piece where Mike Norvell understands what he got. This is kind of surprising considering that Mike Norvell took a chance on him, and then he also skipped out in his senior season for personal reasons, but was able to come back into the spring and has really practiced really well. I'm not saying that he's going to be anything this season because I really do think that your defensive tackles are probably Robert Cooper, Jarrett Jackson, Fabian Lovett, Malcolm Ray, and Joshua Farmer, I think are going to be the primary defensive tackles with Robert Cooper and Fabian Lovett being the starters there. But I think it could be an efficient piece. And on the defensive end spot, I forgot to mention there, I do think it's going to be Jared Verse at one of the spots, and then Dennis Briggs, I think, could be another piece. But watch out for Derek McClendon. Like I said, I think he's going to be a really, really efficient piece there. And another guy I would watch out in a high reserved role for that would be Patrick Payton. I think those are your four guys that you're really going to bank on to be successful this season. Byron Turner's kind of a wild card. I don't really know what to expect out of him just yet. Leonard Warner's going to be probably played in minimal snaps, but you may see him a couple of times. George Wilson, maybe, but I just don't see it. Sean Jackson, I really don't see it right now. Aaron Hester, I know he's a true freshman, so maybe he doesn't have a lot of playing time there, but overall, I think the defensive tackles have to really pull their weight this season to be able to be successful in the defensive end spot. But I really do think that Florida State's going to kind of compete with that sack total that they had from last season and really be successful for this season. So I really do think that your biggest sack producers are probably going to be, if I had to guess, probably a Dennis Briggs. You're probably going to have Jared Verse, and I'm going to say a wild card would probably be Jared Jackson to watch out for on the defensive tackle spot. But I think Lovett's going to have more sacks on the defensive tackle group itself. But if you enjoyed the video today, I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you see where Jermaine Johnson gets picked at today. I'm going to say he gets picked to the Eagles, but I've heard some rumors that he might even go top 3 with the Texans. That would be really big for him. Hopefully, Ja'Shawn Corbin and also Keirthomas gets drafted as well. But we'll definitely see, and I'll be definitely cheering on our Noles as they go to the NFL and kind of get that next chapter in their life and kind of start their financial support with their families. But as always, I really appreciate everyone watching the video. Make sure you comment your thoughts on the video. Also, like the video. And also hit that subscribe button because I'm almost at 1,100 subscribers. I really do appreciate all the love and the support. And as always, go Noles.